It's probably fair to say that hands are rarely among artists' favorite things to draw. They are quite tricky, and just when you feel like you finally got them figured out, the next pose sends you right back to square one. But with Eclipse Studio Paint 3D hand model, things can be a lot easier. Today I'll show you how to use it, how to match it to your characters, how to create poses, and most importantly, how to avoid that stiff "I traced a 3D model and everyone can tell" look. So let's start by taking a look at the model itself. Or rather, models I should say. From basic to delicate to rugged, there are a lot of different options to choose from. Once you've placed one onto the canvas, the first thing you'll notice is how much control you have. There are all these little symbols. By tipping and dragging the ones with the camera icon, for example, you can adjust the camera angle, zoom in, zoom out, and basically view the model from any perspective you need. The symbols with the box icon let you rotate the hand freely in the 3D environment without changing the camera perspective. When the slider icon is activated, you can tip the rigged parts of the model. This allows you to open and close the hand, bend individual fingers naturally, and pretty much create any pose you want. The symbol with the circle and arrows, on the other hand, lets you stretch the model, rotate it, and select and move individual phalanges for extra precise positioning. But the really interesting part is the customization options. Open the menu by tipping the wrench icon in the Tool Settings panel. This will open a window with lots of different options. It might feel a bit overwhelming at first, but don't let that scare you. There are useful settings everywhere. For example, under Operation, you can find options that change the rotation increments, allowing you to rotate the hand more precisely. You can also choose whether movement is relative to the world space or the object itself. For now though, I only want to show you the settings that affect the hand model directly. For example, tipping on camera settings, you open the perspective parameter, which is really useful if you want to work with extreme foreshortening. The slider makes objects that are close to the camera appear even closer or less so, depending on how high you set it. So if you are working on a difficult foreshortened pose, the perspective slider can exaggerate the effect or flatten it, allowing you to customize the model to fit your needs. This alone can save a huge amount of guesswork. Under Hand Model, you can change the overall appearance of the hand, making it look more delicate, bony or rugged. This is perfect if, for example, you choose a delicate model at the beginning, but later on want to tweak its appearance and create a hybrid that better fits your needs. A fantasy warrior might have larger, rougher hands, while younger characters could have slimmer fingers and softer proportions. Under Pose, you can flip the hand model and quickly place it into a rough starting position. The triangle control lets you transition smoothly between closed fingers, spread fingers, a fist, and every stage in between. Adjust parts lets you change things like the finger length, hand proportions, nail shape, and nail width, either for the entire hand or individually by selecting a specific finger in the diagram. If you tip on the palm in the diagram, you can also add details such as veins. You can even adjust the width of the wrist. This makes it much easier to create references that match the different characters. Outline is fairly self-explanatory. It changes the outline around your model, allowing you to adjust the line thickness, opacity and color. Under Light Source, you can experiment with different lighting setups and change the direction of the light. Having control over the lighting is especially useful because it lets you preview where shadows and highlights naturally fall before you start painting. You can even add a second light source and create a more elaborate lighting setup by introducing colored lights. It can be a bit tricky though, so I recommend spending some time experimenting with it. Since this video is focused on the hand model itself, that covers most of the important settings. Now that we know the basic options, the next step is positioning the 3D model so that it works with your character. I usually lower the opacity of my drawing or the model and move the 3D hand around until the perspective lines up properly. Don't worry about making it perfect right away. It's often easier to get the general position right first and then make small adjustments afterwards. Pay special attention to the wrist connection and the overall gesture. Even if the fingers are technically correct, the pose can still feel wrong if the hand isn't supporting the character's movement or expression. Think of the hand as part of the entire pose rather than a separate object. Once everything lines up, you've got a solid foundation to build on. Now let's move on to the actual drawing process. I'll create a new layer and start tracing over the hand. And here's an important tip. Use the 3D model as a reference and not a rule. Tracing every contour exactly as it's given may be technically correct, but it can still feel stiff and lifeless. Instead, look for opportunities to push the gesture. Maybe exaggerate the curve of a finger, maybe adjust the silhouette, maybe make the perspective a little more dramatic. Small changes can add a surprising amount of energy. If you've already drawn the hand and something feels off, don't worry. Tools like Liquify are incredibly useful for making quick adjustments, and the Transform tool can also help to adjust larger areas as a whole. And if you need more control, the Puppet Warp tool is fantastic for tweaking finger positions or improving the flow of the pose. These tools allow you to maintain the structure of the hand while adding more personality and movement. The 3D model works best as a starting point. Once the line art is finished, it's time to color. I fill the line art with the base color and add slight gradients using the airbrush. Then I switch to the round brush. For the shadows, I like to use the knuckles as points of reference. I switch back and forth between the brush and the color picker to capture subtle variations and soften the shadows. In general, I pay attention to the connection points, especially where the fingers join the hand, and add shadows in those areas. Next I add highlights. I like to imagine fingers as boxes, so I place lighter colors along the edges to make them appear more three-dimensional. You can absolutely use the 3D model as a reference for lighting and shadow placement. If you set up a custom light source earlier, you'll already have a good idea of where to place highlights and shadows. But if you already have some experience, you can of course rely on what feels right to you. Sometimes the best choice is simply whatever works best for the illustration. Personally, I'm often a bit lazy when it comes to realistic lighting, and I tend to go with my gut feeling. I still use the reference as a guidance, but I usually prioritize my own artistic decisions. And that's how I use the 3D hand model in Clip Studio Paint. Between the customization options, hand tracking and flexible posing tools, it's a really helpful way to build accurate hand references that fit your character. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.